ever catch yourself like just scrolling through apps and it kind of hits how much we rely on our phones these days?
Yeah, for sure.
It's kind of wild when you stop and think about it.
It is, yeah.
Well, today's deep dive, we're tackling the tech behind that very experience, Apple's iOS.
Okay.
You sent over that Wikipedia article on it, which is perfect. Tons to unpack there.
Lots to dig into, yeah.
History, features, all those behind-the-scenes decisions. Ready to jump in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so it's easy to take smartphones for granted now, right?
Totally.
But the story of iOS, it's got some pretty interesting twists and turns, like even right at the start.
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking 2005, iPods are everywhere, but the smartphone as we know it, that was still like a distant dream for most people.
Yep, still figuring it out.
And Steve Jobs, he had this dilemma. The Wikipedia article, it really digs into this. It was kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
There were these two paths they could have taken.
Right.
Shrink down the full Mac OS, like from a Mac computer, to fit on a phone, or take the iPod software, which was way simpler at the time, and, well, basically supersize it.
Interesting. Yeah. So which way did they go?
Well, can you imagine trying to, like, cram Mac OS with all its windows and menus onto that tiny first-gen iPhone screen?
Oh, man, that would have been rough.
Thankfully, Jobs, he went with the iPod Teams approach, evolving it into, you guessed it, iOS. And that right there set the stage for so much of what came after.
Huge decision, yeah.
Speaking of, here's something that blew my mind, like way back when I first learned about it. The original iPhone.
Yeah.
No third-party apps allowed.
Wait, really?
I kid you not. Jobs, he was convinced web apps were the future.
Web apps, huh?
Remember those early mobile web apps?
Oh, man, don't remind me.
Clunky doesn't even begin to describe it, right?
Yeah, it's amazing how far things have come.
It really is. So native apps winning out, in retrospect, makes total sense.
Oh, for sure.
But the thing is, it's remarkable how fast public pressure actually changed things.
Yeah, how long did that take?
Not long at all. March 6, 2008. Mark your calendars, folks.
Okay.
That's the day the iOS SDK launched. And, well, things haven't been the same since.
The SDK, so for those who might not be familiar.
Oh, right. Sorry. Getting ahead of myself.
What exactly does that stand for?
SDK, it's short for Software Development Kit.
Okay.
Basically, it's a toolbox for all those app creators out there. Provides everything they need to build specifically for iOS. Without it, forget about those polished native apps we use constantly.
Right. So that decision, going with the macOS-inspired base, then the SDK launch on top of that, that's what really set the stage for like this whole app revolution we live in now.
Exactly. And we're just scratching the surface here. But before we go too deep, let's switch gears a bit.
Sounds good.
Because iOS, it's not just about the tech under the hood, right?
Heck yeah.
It's how it looks, how it feels to use. Let's talk design.
Okay, yeah, let's get into it.
So we've talked about, you know, the tech behind iOS, but now I kind of want to get into the part we actually see, the part we use every day, the interface, right?
Right.
And it's changed a lot over the years, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's gone through some major transformations. One of the biggest, I think, happened with iOS 7.
Oh, yeah, iOS 7, that was a big one.
That was kind of like the end of an era in a lot of ways.
How so?
Well, it marked the end of skeuomorphism.
Skeuomorphism, right. For those of us who maybe don't have that design jargon memorized,
Sure.
what exactly does that even mean?
Basically, it's when things look like real-world objects.
Oh, okay, I remember that.
Like the leather stitching on the Notes app?
Yeah.
Or you know how the camera app used to make that satisfying click sound?
Oh, man, I kind of miss that sound, to be honest.
I know, right? But iOS 7, they just ditched all that.
They went, like, the complete opposite direction, didn't they?
Pretty much, yeah. Sleek, minimalist, no more textures or those fun little sounds.
It was a big change.
It was definitely a bold move. And, you know, it's kind of divided people. Some people loved how clean and simple it was, but others, they really missed those tactile details.
Yeah, I can see that. It's funny how those little design choices, they really affect how we experience using something, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's not just about aesthetics. It's about how we understand and use our devices, like intuitively.
Exactly. Okay, so speaking of intuitive design, the camera app, it's supposed to be like the epitome of simple.
Right.
Point
and shoot. Easy.
But did you know that it actually hides some pretty important settings?
Really?
Yeah, like want to change your video resolution, adjust the frame rate, You got to go digging through the system settings to find them.
Huh. Interesting. So it's not right there in the app itself.
Nope, tucked away.
Why do you think they do that?
Well, I guess it keeps the camera app super clean, you know?
Right.
Like, super straightforward for those moments when you just need to, like, quickly snap a pic.
But for people who want more control.
Extra step.
Yeah. It does make you wonder how many people are actually, like, digging through those settings, though.
Right.
Like, maybe most users are totally fine with the defaults.
Could be. But then it makes you think, how much storage space are we all wasting by not, you know, optimizing those settings? Something to think about. But since we're talking about, you know, maximizing space and all that, let's talk about app organization for a sec. Remember when iOS 4 introduced folders?
Oh, yeah.
Those were pretty basic at first, though, right?
Pretty bare bones, yeah.
But now it's crazy how many apps we can cram into folders.
I know, it's out of control. How many can you fit now?
On an iPhone? Up to 135 in a single folder?
What? Seriously?
Yeah. And even more on an iPad. It's wild.
That's insane.
Right. Think about it. Back when the iPhone first came out, the idea of even having that many apps, it seemed crazy.
Totally.
So it begs the question, are folders actually helping us, you know, manage our digital lives?
Or are they just enabling us to, like, hoard apps?
Yeah, right. It's like a whole psychological thing, how we organize, how we use digital spaces.
Absolutely. Design influencing behavior, for better or for worse.
All right, so we've talked about how iOS has evolved, how Apple designs it, but now I kind of want to get into something that always seems to spark a debate online, you know, jailbreaking.
Yeah, people have some strong opinions about that one.
It's one of those things you either love it or hate it.
It's definitely a topic that gets people fired up, yeah.
And honestly, I think it's often misunderstood. Like, you say jailbreaking and people jump to, oh, that's just for piracy.
Right, it gets painted with that brush a lot.
But this is where that Wikipedia article you sent is really helpful, because it highlights how, for a lot of people, jailbreaking is about control.
Control's wrong.
Right. Like iOS, it's designed to be super secure.
Yeah,
right?
super locked down.
Which, on the one hand, that's great, right? Stability, safety, all that.
Sure, you don't want your phone crashing all the time.
Exactly. But it also means you're playing by Apple's rules, you know?
Right, within their sandbox.
In jailbreaking, it's like, well, what happens when you want to break out of that sandbox?
Push those boundaries a little.
Exactly. Installing custom themes, changing system fonts, even getting apps that Apple doesn't allow in the App Store.
Okay, so more freedom, more customization.
Right. And actually, the article mentions this. The EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation.
Yeah, I remember reading about that.
They actually had that big legal argument that modifying your own iPhone to install apps from outside the App Store should be legal, and they won.
Wow, that's huge.
It is. It kind of gets to that whole debate about, like, ownership in the digital age, you know?
Right. If you buy a device, shouldn't you be able to do what you want with it?
Exactly. Though I guess the flip side is you start messing with the code, you could make it less secure, right?
Yeah. It's definitely a trade-off.
For sure.
Yeah.
Which, speaking of messing with code, this is where things get a little technical.
Okay.
Because the article talks about all these different types of jailbreaks, and it gets kind of confusing.
Yeah, like tethered, untethered, what else was there?
Semi-tethered, even semi-untethered.
Right. It's a lot to keep track of. What's the difference again?
So it mainly comes down to, like, how much access the jailbreak gives you.
Okay.
And what happens if you have to restart your phone.
Right, that's the big one. Okay, so like tethered, what's that about?
Tethered's the most basic. It's temporary. Every time you restart your phone, you have to plug it into a computer to reactivate the jailbreak.
So not exactly convenient.
Not really, no. Untethered, that's the holy grail. You can restart all you want, no problem.
Ah, okay, I gotcha. And the semi ones, those always trip me up.
Yeah, they're kind of in between. Semi-tethered, you can restart your phone normally, but you need to run a special app on your phone after to, like, re-enable the jailbreak.
Okay.
And semi-untethered, similar, but you use a website to reactivate it, not an app on your phone.
Gotcha. So it's like this constant back and forth, huh?
Totally. Apple releases an update, patches up the security holes, and then the jailbreakers, they got to find new ways in.
It's like a game of cat and mouse.
It really is. Makes you appreciate how complex this whole iOS thing is, right?
Yeah, it's more than meets the eye, that's for sure.
Totally. We started with iPods, now we're talking about jailbreaking. It's kind of wild how far we've come, and it all goes back to this operating system we use every single day.
It's amazing how much it's shaped how we interact with technology, really.
It really is, and that's the beauty of these deep dives, isn't it?
What's that?
You start digging into something, and it's just like opens up all these new questions, new avenues to explore.
Oh, absolutely. Like, we barely scratched the surface of this whole voiceover thing, and that's just one tiny part of iOS.
And like we touched on before, iOS versus Android, that battle's not just on phones anymore, it's everywhere.
Right. Watches, TVs, even cars now.
Crazy. Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground here, but hopefully this got everyone thinking about, the tech we use every day in a whole new light.
There's always more to learn. And hey, you never know. Maybe this will inspire someone to do a little deep dive of their own.
I like the way you think. Well, on that note, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of iOS. Until next time.